When it comes to the tale of the evolutionary arms race that is survival, many species develop different strategies to stay alive. While blood chasers became the apex hunters, and ironwings became cooperative, as well as night snaggers became the masters of stealth, sometimes you don't need to overthink it. Sometimes you don't need to fulfill a niche, and doing the simpler thing will actually just secure your survival. And for as insulting as it sounds, simple can be a very good way to describe your local Stonesnout. See, they have a simple strategy for survival. Does anyone currently live there? If no, it's mine now. This, combined with their surprisingly low appetites given their size and their omnivorous nature, means they can be found anywhere. But they mostly tend to be in the harsher locations, the ones no one else wants. Adaptability is very important to them, and their survival strategy, to the point where they might change their very behaviour to be more like the locals. For an example, Stonesnouts that live within scoured lands might be seen calmly grazing in grasslands near a clade of ironwings, while the ones that nest near the broken Svardial lands might be more aggressive as to fight the local blood chasers commonly. But despite their adaptability, they are mostly found within the Valkyrian range, and are known for being quite wild and a rarely tamed species, but this is mostly because of their jagged and rough appearance, as they look a lot like the very typical monster of the world, and in truth, they are not as aggressive as some dragon species are, but they will eat you if you ignore their warnings. Pure strength is a core part of their strategy. They will crash into and crush things in their way. And if they are up against fortifications, they tend to slam head first into the walls, breaking the stone with the face alone. This is what gave them the moniker of the Stonesnouts, by the way. And all of this is helped by their anatomy. They are classed as wyverns, given their one surprisingly pair of stunty legs, and their absolutely massive pair of thick, leathery wings. In fact, I would probably state that they have one of the largest wings of most dragon kind, at least those that are very commonly ridden. Large claws are on the end of their wing joints and feet that are used mostly for digging into the ground and moving rock and earth. Their bodies are coated in spikes that are used to scare off and hurt would-be aggressors, and their scales are unbelievably thick, to the point where if you want to craft with dragon scales, and you're okay with it being on the heavier side, I would highly recommend you use theirs. Their tails are stubby and short, and their chests are quite large and as protective of the rest of their body, which is quite interesting compared to most other dragons. And lastly, their face is incredibly strong. They have a large horn on the top of their head, which is used for everything from combat to social encounters, and there is a spike under their chin, which is as sharp as a blade, but surprisingly, is their whole head is as strong as their skull. It is almost as if they have an additional exo-skull around their head. The bones are that thick in that area. All of these facts combined also results in their biggest flaws. See, they are quite stupid, especially by dragon standards, and their brains are smaller than most dragons despite their large size. And their large size means they are very slow compared to other dragons, which is probably the main reason they are not at the height of the food chain. Despite how much tougher Stonesnouts are, the superior speed and intelligence of the blood chaser will mean that they will almost always come out on top on the end. But nothing is certain in nature, so I would never bet your money on a wild dragon fight. Their colours denote their clade, and they also tend to be a lot less aggressive when around their own clade. With the exception of the alpha males, they are almost always more friendly when they're in a group, so the solitary ones should be avoided, but the groups of them are fine. They also take on quite dark colours, and they can often be found at mountaintops and underground. This sometimes puts them in conflict with both blood chasers and night snaggers at the same time, Most likely this is a result of their low intellect. While lots of them are solitary, they do live quite often in groups. The clades that do this are mostly made up of females and their offspring, with a dominant male that rules over the area. The male will sometimes allow subdominant males and their own children within their lands, and I like to dub these males as the Clade Kings, as there tends to really only be one per clade of these males. They are very stubborn by nature, and can be quite hard to tame. For this reason, but unlike some hard-to-tame dragons, there is a known trick to them. See, they respect strength. Pure and absolute strength, and probably only strength. For this reason, those who actually tend to tame them are said to be as strong as the dragons themselves. And given their most famous riders, I can see why. See, they are most famously ridden by the Volcarian Stormrazers, a proud and strong group of tribal warriors who used to have trouble with these massive beasts until they learned the trick to taming them. And a lot of chieftains of the Stormrazers actually tamed the Clade Kings, which has resulted in a lot of Stonesnouts viewing Volcarians as part of their clade. And in fact, some wild Stonesnouts tend to live close by because of this. This actually becomes a nuisance quite often, however, as wild ones try to challenge the chief's dragon quite often. This reason leads to them having to hunt down these dragons commonly to thin their natural numbers. However, the Volkers made a festival of it, and it's become an integral part of both their culture and survival. But don't let all this harshness about their nature fool you. They are not as hostile as they would look. While they are aggressive at times, and if they roar at you, that is your one and only warning to back off. A roar from a Stonesnout is far more important than a roar from another dragon with their social scenarios. But for most of the time, they can be seen resting and grazing. In fact, one cute thing that they do quite commonly is bathe within the ground, usually within earth, mud, or snow, whatever's closer to them really. Something that's known about the Stonesnouts that makes them seem more aggressive than it actually is how much they love destroying earth, rock, and stone. It looks hostile, but to them they're just playing. Destroying rock and stone is so much fun to them, as well as man-made structures, which is a bit of an issue. Many castles and forts have been destroyed due to a clade of wild Stonesnouts simply playing with their young. This is why keeping track of the mating season is quite important, as the newer ones and the younger ones tend to do this a lot more. This is also the reason the Volcarians tend to make their homes out of wood. Even though fire burns their wooden homes, Stonesnouts are just more likely to break stone than wood. And never let them near their sacred sanctuary for this reason, unless they have been properly tamed. But now I should get to some of the fun parts, the legendary ones, the unique ones with stories of their own, and the ones that tend to break the rules. Well, sit down a moment, because they are as interesting as ever. There are quite a few that I think are integral to understanding Stonesnouts, and I'll start with one of the oldest dragons of all time. Born all the way back in the primeval age, the oldest age known to man. Bizarrely, the horn is on his chin, and the blade is on his head, and he has horns along his eyebrows that are like blades, defensive plating on his chest, and a thick plating on his tail. Istogandr, the immortal anvil. He is known as the father of all Stonesnouts and their kind, and is believed that most descend directly from him. His scales are immensely strong due to ages of conflict, that it is said he is able to fly through a stone wall and crush it with his strength and momentum alone, while still being able to fly. He has reduced many a castle to rubble over the years, and he might even be responsible for collapses of whole civilizations that predate most living people, and he might even be responsible for them being lost to time. But there is also the strongest of their kind. One that commonly kills blood chasers as if they were nothing, as well as entire Wingard platoons within moments. The legend is Radkorn, Scourge of the Skeld, with a crest of black demon-like horns coating his head to match his dark red colours. Less but larger spikes on his body. He is a mighty dragon, feared by most and seen as a monster by many. Some view him as the king of the Valkyrian range, and the protector that stops the Skeld from conquering too far. And bizarrely, he seems to singularly focus on the Skeld. Well, he'd attack all unwanted, but the Skeld draw his ire in a particular way for some reason. Perhaps it's just their armor, perhaps he likes the Valkyrians. It is unknown. That's enough of the unique ones, for now at least. I'd like to briefly talk about my Stonesnout. See, the one I have rarely travels much anymore, and it lives in my house as a sort of guard dragon. He stays in my backyard for most part, and took a while before he finally stopped uprooting all of my plants to play in the dirt. I ended up just getting him a mud pit to play in, and he's pretty content with that for the most part. I met him a long time ago, and he's very aggressive to almost everyone but me. And I can't explain why. See, one day I was travelling in the Valkyrian range. Well, I say travelling. I was stranded alone in the cold with no supplies. Funnily enough, a storm raiser was responsible for that, but that's a long story. But I was drifting off and dying in the snow, passing out slowly in the cold. And as my consciousness faded, the last thing I saw was a dragon swooping down. I feared this was the end, and passed out. But instead of my demise, I awoke within a small cave, and a large piece of cooked meat before me. At first, I thought a storm raiser had saved me, only to see a wild Stonesnout staring at me from the dark. It spooked me for sure, but he was not aggressive, and in fact, he was quite nurturing. Long story short, if it weren't for him, I would have died. After that, I rode him out to safety, and he's been with me ever since. He's kind and almost sweet to me, but very aggressive to others. But I think I've said enough for now. The thunder is kicking in, and I'm not sure if it's just a storm or an angry Stonesnout roaring. Regardless, I'm not going to be here to find out. Thank you for listening to my tales. I am the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.